My marriage was a huge failure. Well, what did I expect? It was an arranged marriage after all. Usually, nothing good ever comes out of an arranged marriage. Just pain, frustration, despicable stares from people around, and miserable life. This miserable life was assigned to me by my parents. We were well off. Riches were underestimation. We were loaded. We had virtually everything in the world. Regardless of that, it appeared that Mum and Dad were not satisfied with that. They craved the whole world for themselves. My parents were what I could call insatiable individuals, if those words even sounded good enough to assess them. My name is Jasmine Nova Hill, and I am 28 years old. When I was little, I never really enjoyed quality time with my parents. They were either busy with work or I don't know. I spent most of my time with babysitters who took good care of me more than my parents ever would. It was not long before they chose to drop me off with Dad's parents. Mum's parents were dead long before I was born, so I don't know them. I was only 6 when they dropped me off at Nana's and Papa's place, and they seldom came to visit. I lived with my grandparents and spent time with them more than I ever did with my parents. Nana and Papa cared for me better than my parents ever did. My parents were never there for my birthdays. Rather, they would bring a gift 2 months after my birthday. Multiple times, they'd simply deliver it through the driver or a secretary. Papa and Nana never made me feel the rejection of my so-called dear parents. They made me feel loved and accepted. They treated like I was their own kid, and I must say at some point, I saw them as my birth parents. They told me every single day that my parents loved me so much and were busy working so they could give me all the good things I desired. But I knew they were just saying all that, so I would not grow up to despise my parents. An awful incident happened when I was 16. Papa left us. He died in his sleep. Nana and I wept so much our eyes almost jumped out of its sockets, especially on the day of his cremation. Few months later, Nana left me too. I was miserable and wept so much I felt my eyeballs would fall out. It was not until after Nana's funeral that Mum and Dad chose to take me back in. Now, after forsaking me all these years, they come back now thinking they could do as they liked with me by making me walk down the aisle with the most arrogant, cruel man I've ever heard of, Sebastian James Kings. They want me to tie the knot with Sebastian just because they want to be in coalition with his parents, who were business moguls. Like I said before, Mum and Dad wanted more fortune for themselves, so they are ready to do everything and anything they could to have the whole world, if that was even possible. That included marrying me off to a total stranger. Mum, Dad, do you realize that we don't even know these people, except for what we read about them on the tabloids? They could be drug lords or something, way dangerous than that for all we know. Besides, I don't know or love this man in question, and yet you just want to marry me off to him. I ranted when they told me, well, it is not like you are in a relationship in someone else at the moment, and even if you are in a relationship, you have no choice because this could be a tremendous breakthrough for our family. This could be our chance of becoming multi-billionaires. Child, her father replied, so you prefer to trade my future for business success? Dad, I thought we were family, but this is cold-hearted. I shouldn't be amazed. You and Mum have never liked me. You've always chased wealth and prestige, and you never even remembered that you have a child. I am not going to sit back and watch myself get married to that man. I might just escape, I said. You wouldn't dare. If you do just that, then you do not wish to continue being my daughter, my father replied. When deseas. You heard me correctly. If you choose not to get married to Sebastian, then I'd have to repudiate you as my daughter. If you won't help our family become a multimillionaire family, then you have no purpose to remain here under my roof, Dad announced. I couldn't believe what I was listening to. My own father would waste no time in repudiating me if I refused to get married to someone I don't even know or love. I couldn't say anything else because I was so pissed, so I stomped off to my room. I wasn't going to agree to my parents' wish without a fight. I recalled that throughout the whole time Dad and I were contending, Mum just sat there tapping and swiping on the screen of her phone, profusely. Probably attending to some issues pertaining to business. I have always thought perhaps Mum and Dad didn't hate me. They were just busy with the company like Nana and Papa always told me, and now this has proven to me that they were wrong all along. I would rather leave the house than get married to that man. For days, Dad didn't talk about the topic of marriage, and neither did I. I pretended that day didn't actually happen. It continued until one day, I came back from work to meet some visitors at our house. Dad and Mum were all smiles while discussing to the visitors, and when they finally caught sight of me, Dad and Mum walked up to me with phony smiles on their faces. "Jasmine, darling, we were just talking about you. Sebastian and his parents are here to meet you and begin preparations for the wedding," Mum said. Gaily. I've never seen Mum so joyful, however I knew it was all but a phony. Wait, what? I think I heard wedding and preparations in the same sentence. Who is getting married? I questioned, playing dumb. My parents hurled death glares at me and turned with radiant smiles on their faces to the guests. "Oh, please, don't mind my daughter. She loves to tease around and besides, she is still in surprise that she would be getting married soon," Dad replied. Dad twirled around to face me, and with a soft but threatening voice he said, "Don't you dare humiliate me now." Mum and Dad dragged me towards the guests, and I could see Sebastian and his parents. This was the first time I was seeing them in person. All I've seen were their pictures on the internet and tabloids. Well, I must admit, he looks really attractive, but then again I guess his attitudes are just as awful as the tabloids say they are. His mum walked up to me and embraced me so tight I thought I was going to run out of breath and die. She released me from her tight grip. "She is so beautiful," she announced, turning her husband now, who simply nodded his head. He seemed less interested in whatever was going on. I simply smiled at her, not wanting to seem rude. Through the corner of my eyes I peeked at Sebastian. He was on his phone, just tapping, scrolling, and swiping. He looked like he was compelled to do this marriage thing too. He had the same facial expression as his father, unconcerned, irritated. "In a hurry to leave this place." "Bro, I am in a hurry to leave this place as well," I thought. I glanced back at his mother who was staring at me like I was a gold medal she had just won. This was beginning to feel thigh-deared. What if I was right? The smile on her face was so adorable and contagious, but I didn't know what is going on in her head. "Anyways, since you've signed the contract, the wedding will take place in 2 weeks. You don't have to worry about wedding arrangements. We have settled everything, including her wedding dress." She turned to my parents who had bright smiles on their faces. They looked like they've just won a lottery, while I, on the other end, couldn't believe that I was going to get married to a stranger in 2 weeks' time. I heard Sebastian's mother talk about a contract. I guess I'll have to ask my parents what she was talking about. Plus, I vividly remember telling Dad that I would be getting married to nobody. Not Sebastian. Not somebody I wasn't in love with. Chapter 1 has come to a close. Please stay with us as we read through the rest of this story. If you are watching, please give us a like and leave a comment telling us where you are tuning in from. Now, let's continue listening. After the formalities, the Kings left our house. Then, I spun to face my parents cause we really needed to discuss about that contract. They had just signed. "So Mum, Dad, first of all, I really don't understand why the Kings were at our house. I certainly remember that I told you I wasn't getting married to Sebastian. Also, I heard you signed a contract. Is that something I should worry about?" I mentioned. "They were here to finalize your wedding because the contract we just signed was to seal the deal of partnership we had with them. We signed the contract because we were afraid you'd run away after you strongly refused to get married to their son," Mum uttered for the first time since this matter rose up. Mom, Dad, do you both understand what you've just done? You just sold me off to the kings, I cried out. Don't be ridiculous, child. We just became multi-billionaires. We are rich. Dad exclaimed, laughing alongside Mum. My chest started aching. My head was spinning. My eyes were getting moist. My own parents just sold me off, and here I was terrified that Mrs. King was a bad person. Meanwhile, my parents were too. Indirectly, I stomped to my room and sat on my bed. Those words kept haunting me. Anyways, since you've signed the contract, the wedding will take place in 2 weeks. They were here to finalize your wedding. We just became multi-billionaires. We are rich. Errorgy! I screamed out in frustration. I started thrashing things around my room. I was beyond upset. I was mad at my parents. I felt like a commodity in the mall that had just been sold off. Hot tears began to pour down my cheeks. I closed my eyes and cried out the resentment I felt within. My parents just sold me off. That truth is gonna hurt forever. I lay on my bed in stillness and just stared at nothing in particular. Looks like I am bound to get married to Sebastian anyways. I thought over the hell my life was going to be when I get married to him. I would have to suffer in silence, with no one to rescue me. The supposed day came, and I was in a room staring at the mirror in front of me. I was dressed in a white ball gown wedding dress, and a veil was resting on my head. My face had been padded up with various cosmetic products, some of which I've never heard of. I was looking glamorous on the outside. However, on the inside, my soul was shattered. I was unhappy and scared at the same time. Unhappy to be getting married to someone I do not love, and scared about what would happen after we say I do. I was ruminating over what my new life will be when I heard the door open. I looked up to see the man I was going to be married to in a few minutes. I wondered why he was here. But since he came here to see me privately, it must be something important. Maybe he came to tell me the wedding has been cancelled. I won't waste your time. I came here to inform you on what you should not expect from this marriage. Don't expect love, because this is not a love marriage to begin with. Don't expect that we'd become close or get familiar with each other. I'll give you a list of the rules and regulations later after the wedding, he said, and stomped out before I could realize what was going on. I blinked twice at the door he had just walked through. I haven't even said I do, and he is already making life difficult for me and has already told me what I should be expecting. Should I just run off? If I did, Mum and Dad, or even the Kings, would hunt me down. I sighed and buried my face between my palms of my hands. The door opened again, and I looked up to see what more he wanted to say, but I came face to face with someone else. It was Javier himself, who had just walked through that door and towards me. I was astounded and was expecting him to converse with me in the very same manner his son did. Sorry, I walked in without your approval. I have been knocking on the door for a while, and when I got no answer, I let myself in, he said. No, it is okay. I hope there isn't a problem, sir, I replied. No, I just wanted to talk to you and give you a few advices before walking down the aisle with my son. He replied. Sure, no problem, I replied, expecting him to taunt me. I want to apologize for whatever you might go through after you get married to Sebastian. He may seem brutal, tenacious and cold sometimes, but then again I believe he has a good heart. He had a brawl with his mum over this arranged marriage, and I know he is going to make life a living nightmare for you. And that is why I've come to ask for forgiveness on his behalf. I see you are a good woman, and I guess that is what my wife saw too. We were both tired of his wild lifestyle, and that was why we chose you for our son, he spoke. I was obviously shocked. I thought he didn't like me. I felt wetness on my cheeks, and when I touched it, I saw tears. I didn't even realize that I had been crying. Oh, come on, don't cry, my dear. If there is anything you need, You can meet my wife and me," he added. "Okay, sir." "Thank you," I replied. "Oh, please." "You can call me Dad," he mentioned with a smile. "And you can call me Mum," a feminine voice said, and I turned to see who had spoken. I turned to face the door to find Sebastian's mum, standing just in front of the door. I didn't even hear the door open. She walked in and had a bright smile on her face. I felt relaxed at once and thought, even if I am marrying a bad man, I'll get to have good in-laws. That was a consolation. My face lit up, and I had a little hope within me. She pulled me to herself and held me in a cozy embrace. "I am sorry, dear. I might have messed up your life because of my selfish intentions for my son, and I also know this is not the kind of marriage you've dreamt of having. But I'll be here whenever you need me," she guaranteed. She pulled out of the hug and continued, "It is time to get you married. You look beautiful in your gown, by the way, dear. We better move on. We'll send in your father so he can walk you down the aisle," Naomi uttered. They both walked out of the room, hand in hand, looking so beautiful together and happy to be with each other. That was the kind of thing I wanted to experience. But I could never have it now. I dried my tears with a hanky on the table in front of me, and luckily my makeup didn't smudge. Thank God the makeup was waterproof, otherwise the makeup artist would have my head. He spent 2 hours trying to make my face look perfect. I waited for Dad to come and walk me down the aisle. Not like I wanted him to after what he did to me. I guess that is just how it is supposed to be done at weddings. Otherwise, I'd have walked myself down the aisle. Minutes later, he actually walked through that door. He beamed when he saw me. "My beautiful daughter is getting married. Come, let me walk you down the aisle," he said, reaching his hand for mine. I was still mad at him, and Mum, they acted like they did nothing wrong and expect me to pretend too. I'll never forgive them for as long as I live. After saying I do, I am cutting off my ties with them. They cease to become my parents the minute that ring enters my finger. I stood, ignoring his outstretched hand. I stepped out of the room but heard his footsteps behind me. I stood at the giant door, Dad, and I will walk through. Soon he stood beside me. My heart was thumping hard in my chest. My palms were beginning to feel sweaty and shaky. The music came on and the huge doors before me began to open up slowly, and Dad connected his hand with mine. We started walking down the aisle in slow motion, following the beats of the music playing. The congregation all turned back, staring at the bride, which turns out to be me. We finally got to the altar, and he left me there with Sebastian, who looked uninterested in all that was going on. Obviously, the music stopped playing, and the priest faced the congregation and spoke. "We've assembled here this glorious morning to witness the union of Sebastian James King and Jasmine Nova Hills in holy matrimony." "Where are the rings?" the priest inquired. Sebastian's best man, and possibly his best friend, came forward and presented the box of rings to the priest. The priest told the both of us to each take one ring. I took a ring, and so did Sebastian. "Do you, Jasmine, take Sebastian to be your lawfully wedded husband, in sickness and in health, in riches and poverty? Till death do you part?" I looked towards my parents, who were bobbing their heads frantically. I rolled my eyes a little and looked towards Sebastian's parents. They both stared at me, as if begging with their eyes for me to say yes. Poor desperate parents, I thought. I turned back to face the priest, and with a heavy heart I responded, "I do." I slipped the ring into Sebastian's ring finger. The priest turned to Sebastian and asked, "Do you, Sebastian, take Jasmine to be your lawfully wedded wife, in sickness and in health, in riches and poverty? Till death do you part?" With a bored tone, he replied, "I do." He also slipped the ring into my ring finger a little too rough. Does he want to cut off my finger? I thought. Bro, I don't want this marriage too. Is there anyone seated here that doesn't want this two to be joined in holy matrimony. Speak now or forever remain silent. The priest asked. I really wished at this point that a lady would stand up and tell the congregation that she is pregnant with Sebastian's child. That could free me from this bondage, I guess. No matter how long I waited, no one was going to have a reason to stop this wedding. This truth angered me. If there is no one, I hereby pronounce you man and wife. You may now kiss the bride, the priest said with a smile. Only if he knew the real story behind this. He would know this is not a thing of joy for me at all, and probably wouldn't have conducted this wedding. The wedding ceremony ended, and we headed to the reception. I really wasn't in the mood for any partying, but I didn't want to offend the kings. I was surprised to see my best friend and colleagues from work at the wedding because I didn't invite them. Well, I couldn't, because I didn't see it as a thing to be commemorated. Soon, it was time when the bride and groom dance. We danced for only a few minutes. Sebastian told the guests he was feeling a little sick. The party continued as more people flooded the dance floor. I knew Sebastian didn't want to dance with me, so he made up an excuse. Like I want to dance with you too, I thought sarcastically. Few hours later, people began to leave after wishing us a happy life together. Like that was going to ever happen, I thought. Before the last batch of people could leave, my parents and Sebastian's parents walked us to a Mercedes. Benz Maybach that would be taking us to the house we would be living in together. A tear tinted my cheeks, and I quickly wiped it off, so no one would see it. After the pleasantries, we got into the car and the driver drove away. The faster the car drove, the faster my heart kept banging. Welcome to one hell of a marriage, I said to myself. I noticed Sebastian was on his phone, doing only God knows what. I was bored out of myself throughout the ride. We've been riding for what seemed like hours. And this was like a trip with no end. Soon, I noticed that the car was slowly coming to a stop. Finally, I thought. I looked out the window and saw a gigantic gate opening on its own accord. Wow, this was remarkable. The driver started driving again for what felt like minutes. There were beautiful trees along both sides of the narrow path as we drove on the concreted road. I was so lost in the beauty of the environment around me that I didn't realize the car had come to a halt. It was until I heard the door on the other side opening and closing. I looked around and saw that the vehicle had halted. I opened the car door and climbed out of the car. There was a huge and grand building before me. This was where I would be living now. I am beginning to like this place already. I saw Sebastian already walking into the house. Rude much, I said under my breath. I hurried after him because he was walking too fast. Then I remembered my bags inside the car. Sebastian's mum told me during the party that my parents had already brought my belongings and that my car was already parked at Sebastian's mansion. I ran back to fetch them, but the driver, who looked like he was in his late 20s, smiled carefully at me and said, "Do not worry about your bags, Mrs. King. The maids will bring it up for." "Okay, thanks. And please just call me Jasmine. Mrs. King makes me feel too old," I said, smiling back at him. I turned back and walked into the house. Oh my God, the living room was so big. It was like 10 times the one we had at my parents' house. I wonder how massive the bedrooms and kitchen would be. I was just mesmerized by the things I was seeing. Would you keep looking around the place, or would you let me show you to your room? I heard a cold, disgruntled voice behind me. I turned to the direction I heard the voice. He was standing upstairs, looking down at me with icy eyes and a stony look. My room? I thought. Were you expecting us to sleep in the same room? He asked with sarcastic tone. Oops, I think I said that out loud, I thought. Will you keep standing there or would you follow me? He questioned, agitated. I strolled towards him, climbing the stairs slowly until I reached the top. I walked up to him and he pointed towards the door behind us. That is your room. You shouldn't come into my room except I call for you, which would never happen. There in your room, you'll see a folder on the table. It entails of the rules and regulations you must abide by if you do not want to get me upset and attract penalties to yourself, he said. Read it carefully. Word for word, line by line, he showed. After he had said all he wanted to, he walked away and entered a room next door. I sighed and walked to the door he has just shown me. I got in and was wowed by the interior of bedroom. The walls were painted white. There was a chest drawer on the left, a vanity table and a huge bed. The bed was big enough for 2 or 3 people. There was a bedside table too. The creamy-colored drapes made the glamour of the room more apparent. There was a door in the room which I assumed to be the built-in bathroom. I looked at the table and, true to his words, there was an orange folder on the table with rules and regulations, boldly inscribed on it, obvious much. I opened the folder and a paper fell out of it. I bent down and picked it up. I began to read what was written down in it, and I must say it was silly. These are the rules and regulations you should follow while you are living in this house. You mustn't go into my room or my home office. For any reason whatsoever, you must not go into my library without my approval first. Whatever happens in this house must stay in this house. That means do not tell my parents or yours. You do not have the right to question me. Don't question my actions. You are free to do whatever you want. Just don't do the things I say you shouldn't do. You must not hold a private party here if I don't approve of it. This will do for now, but if there are any more, I'd inform you of it. I was overly shocked after reading the so-called rules and regulations. This was worse than being locked up in a prison. I kept the paper back into the folder and sat on the chair in front of the table. Well, if I just followed those rules, I should be able to live peacefully. I am grateful we have separate rooms. At least he'd mind his business, and I'd mind mine. I'll just stay out of his way. It is for the best. I can do that. It is so much better this way. After I had settled down and freshened up, I stepped out of the room and walked down the stairs. I needed to find the kitchen. Not long, I found it without searching for too long. I met an older woman and a younger one who looked so much like her in the kitchen. The younger lady looked like she was around my age. "Hello," I said. They both turned to face me, and the older woman gave me a smile that warmed my heart. "Good evening, Mrs. King. Welcome to your new home. My name is Selena, and this is my daughter, May. I've worked for young Master since he was little. I was his nanny and maid. When he chose to have his own home, he asked me to move with him and continue working for him. I and my daughter will gladly be of service to you," she said. "Please call me Jasmine, and I am happy you guys are here. Now I won't be alone in this huge mansion, and I have May who is around my age." "Could we be friends, May?" I asked. "Of course, miss, we can't," May said, smiling at me. "Oh, please call me Jasmine or Jazz," I replied, and she nodded affirmatively with a smile. "So what is for dinner?" I asked. "Ma'am, it is cheesy pasta with mushrooms and minced meat. That is Sir's favorite. I hope you like that, or should I cook up something else for you?" Selena asked. "No, I am fine with that. Let's get cooking then," I said, clapping my hands. "No, ma'am. I can't let you join us. You just had your wedding today. You must be really exhausted from all those wedding activities," Selena replied. "No, I insist," I opposed. "And I insist too. You need to have a long rest." "Maybe you could join us tomorrow," Selena said. "I am not sleepy yet. Maybe I could just sit here and watch you," I said, giving her my compelling puppy eyes. "Okay, fine." She gave in and my face lit up. We discussed a lot of things, and while Selena was talking, I was reminded of Nana. A lone tear escaped my eyes, and I quickly wiped it, but I was too late. "Why are you crying, miss?" May said. making Selena turn to face me. You remind me so much of my Nana, I replied, looking at Selena. I told them about Nana and Papa and my parents. When I was done with my story, they gave me sad stares. Oh, please, don't give me that look. I've accepted my fate, I replied, cleaning my face and getting rid of all traces of tears. The rest of the evening went on with Selena and May, telling me about their lives as well. Selena even told me all she knew about Sebastian. I got to learn that Sebastian loves seafood. He loves work more than life itself. He may act like a jerk to others, but he is thoughtful and polite towards his parents and Selena. I learnt from May that Sebastian adores Selena and treats her like he treats his own mother. I also found out that he loves the winter season. It reminds him of a good memory. Sebastian is an adopted son of the kings, but they loved him like their biological child. I also learnt that he had been in an orphanage since he was born. He kept going from one foster home to another. He had been to the worst foster homes. He had been tortured, maltreated, and assaulted, and when the kings finally adopted him, he was closed off. He didn't open up to them at first, but when he saw they were different from his other foster parents, he gradually began to open up to them. Sebastian loves winter because that was when his parents found him. During the winter season, I was beginning to feel sorry and thought, maybe he is not as bad as I thought he was. Maybe he was the way he was because of what he has been through. I somehow felt his pain. What my parents did to me was not even half of what Sebastian suffered. But it was something that shattered me too. Soon dinner was served. I ate alone at the dining table because Selena told me Sebastian said he wasn't feeling hungry. I wondered what could have prevented Sebastian from eating his favorite meal. I hope he was okay. I might not have married him for love, but I still care. I can't pretend like I didn't care not after hearing his story. The meal was tasty, and I thanked Selena and May and retired to bed. I was so tired after the activities of the day. I climbed on my bed and was out in no time. GRNNG, my alarm rang, and I jumped out of bed. I forgot I had set an alarm on my phone. I was still so exhausted, but I had to go to work. I looked around my room and saw it wasn't my room at my parents' house. It was then I was struck with the painful reality. I got married yesterday. I looked down at my finger and saw the sparking diamond ring resting on it. I sighed and got up from the bed, dragging myself to the shower. I washed my body to cleanliness. I may or may have not forgotten to take my bath last night before going to bed. After I was done with my bath, I exited the bathroom and walked towards my bags. True to the driver's words, some maids came to drop my bags off. I pulled out a red cotton t-shirt and a blue jean palazzo. You may be wondering why I wasn't wearing corporate. At my place of work, you are permitted to dress the way you want. Supposing it is decent, I topped up my dressing with black sneakers. I applied my orange-scented deodorant and put on some cologne. When I was done, I grabbed my bag and exited my room. I walked down the stairs and headed for the kitchen. I saw Selena and May already preparing breakfast. I greeted them and washed my hands so I could join them, but Selena threw me a stern look and I withdrew my hands. Go sit at the dining table. Breakfast will be ready in a minute, she said, and I listened like a little child who was being scolded by her mother. I walked back to the dining room and waited as she instructed me to. While I was still waiting for breakfast, I heard footsteps descending the stairs and I looked up from my phone to see Sebastian. He was looking so handsome in his shirt and trousers with his suit hanging on one hand. Now I knew the reason women flocked around him, but I wasn't that sort of woman. I am not going to throw myself at him just because he is my husband. And he is good-looking. He descended the stairs and walked towards the dining table, not noticing I was there. Soon, he was standing beside me with a glare, and I looked confused but didn't know how to ask why he was glaring at me that way. You are on my seat, he said, coldly. I quickly stood up from the chair and walked towards the last chair, far away from him. I sat on the opposite side of the chair he was sitting on. That means, apparently, that we were facing each other, though from a long distance, the air was stiff and there was pin-drop silence. That was the moment Selena and May brought breakfast to the table. I thanked them and waited for Sebastian to start eating. I didn't want to be rude. The more I waited, the more he delayed to pick up the spoon and eat. He was tapping and swiping on that phone in his hands. I was starving, and my stomach was beginning to hurt. "You can start eating if you want to," his deep voice said. "No, I'll just wait so we can eat together," I said, trying to sound polite. "I said you can eat. You look famished. Just go ahead without me and stop trying to prove that you are polite," he responded. I wanted to make a rude comment, but I bit back my tongue. I didn't want to cause chaos on the first day of my marriage. I ate in silence as I glanced at Sebastian through the sides of my eyes. Soon I was done. I picked up my bag and left the dining room. I went into the kitchen and met Selena and her daughter having their breakfast. I thanked them for the meal, and they responded with warm smiles and "you are welcomes." I exited the mansion and took a cab. I have my car parked in the garage, but I was too tired to drive. I gave the driver my destination address, and he started the car and off we go. Not long, the cab stopped, and I paid the driver and alighted. He thanked me, and I responded with a warm smile and said, "Have a nice day." "You too," he replied. I guess he wasn't used to people talking to him like that, because he looked dazed and had a bright smile on his face. I am happy I was able to make someone's day. I looked up at the towering building in front of me and smiled. I've worked in this company, Louisville Deluxe Hotel and Restaurant, for a very long time. First as an intern. And when they saw that I was good at what I did, they retained me. I exited the mansion and took a cab. I have my car parked in the garage, but I was too tired to drive. I gave the driver my destination address and he started the car and off we go. Not long, the cab stopped, and I paid the driver and alighted. He thanked me, and I responded with a warm smile and said, "Have a nice day." "You too," he replied. I guess he wasn't used to people talking to him like that because he looked dazed and had a bright smile on his face. I am happy I was able to make someone's day. I looked up at the towering building in front of me and smiled. I've worked in this company, Louisville Deluxe Hotel and Restaurant, for a very long time. First, as an intern, and when they saw that I was good at what I did, they retained me. It all began after I was done with college. I studied hotel management and catering in college. While waiting for replies from the hotels I applied to, I got a response from this hotel, and not just a restaurant, but a restaurant too. I was 21 then, and I was the youngest in the hotel. I was placed in the kitchen at first, but then when there was a shortage of staff in the hotel, I was moved from the kitchen to the hotel. I did well, and so my boss, Mrs. Karen, recommended me to the big boss. Since then, I've been working there and I really enjoy my job. Now I am a boss of my own. I am the director of the hotel and restaurant now. See, I was surprised when the post was handed over to me by the big boss. Mr. Martins, the big boss, told me he was pleased with my enthusiasm and hard-working nature. He said he had been watching me closely, and he saw the passion to work within me, so when he was about retiring, he handed me the post, much to the dismay of a few people. I loved my job so much, it is like the only good thing in my life. I walked into the hotel and the security guys were the first I met, and they greeted me. I replied with a smile and continued my journey into the company. I met a few others on my way who greeted me, and each time, I responded with a bright smile. I walked into my office and almost immediately, my best friend and the head chef, Beth, barges in. She does that almost all the time. It is like we now share an office. What is the newest bride in town doing at work? Unlike other workers, she knows the origin of this marriage. I tell her everything, and she tells me everything too. We're so close, we're like the two sides of a coin. Well, obviously, there isn't going to be any honeymoon, I replied too. She gave me a pitiful look and I smiled sadly at her. We both used to tell ourselves the kind of man and the type of wedding we would like to have. We usually spoke about how we'd imagined our futures to be. She knows I don't like anyone giving me the pitiful looks, but I let this one pass. I needed someone to be dejected with me. I needed someone to pity me and comfort me, and Beth was the perfect person for that. Come to Mama Beth, stretching out her hands for a hug. I chuckled and walked into her embrace and sobbed, and I felt my shoulder has a wet patch too. She was crying. Beth may seem strong, but she is so emotional. After what seemed like some minutes, we pulled away from the hug. Well, I better get back to the kitchen, boss. We have very important people coming to eat at our restaurant these days, she said, wiping her tears as she walked out of my office. Thank you so much, Beth, I thanked her. As I sat down to sit down, I heard another knock on the door. Come in, I said. It was a client. An exceptional client. He has been making use of our hotel's hall for a very long time. Our hotel is said to have the most exceptional multi-purpose hall. Our hall is booked almost every weekend, and even weekdays for one event or the other. When we worked for Jackson for the first time, he was so pleased. He promised to keep coming back and he kept his promise. Since then, he has been coming to make use of our hall. Jackson Montero is a 29 years old, multimillionaire and is one of the top 10 richest CEOs in the state. After helping him with organizing and holding several of his events, especially charity events, we became quite acquainted. Hi, Jack. I greeted with a smile. Hello, Jasmine. How are you doing? He asked with a bright smile. I am good, and you? I answered. I am good too. So a little birdie told me that you got married yesterday. But I didn't know about it because a certain friend of mine didn't tell me about her wedding, he said. Friend. He thought of me as his friend. Are we not friends? He queried, looking crushed. I thought you just thought of me as a client or someone who works for you. I didn't think our relationship was more than that. I answered truthfully. I thought after all these while I have someone who is truly my friend, he said, looking upset. We can be friends, Jack. I am sorry I hurt your feelings, I replied, feeling sorry for him. He just laughed and said, kidding, but I hope you know we're friends now. Yeah. I do. Can we shake hands to this new friendship, I said, stretching my hand for a shake to which he reciprocated. We shook to our newly found friendship. We talked and laughed about a lot of things like we usually do. I couldn't believe I'd be friends with one of the richest men in the state. I only saw him as a client until now. So let's get to the main purpose of why I came today. So aside from the fact that I came to congratulate you on your wedding, I came to talk business. I want to book a few of your best rooms for some business partners of mine who would be traveling here from Paris, Togo, America, and Nigeria for an important conference. I came to meet with you personally because you'd know the best rooms to keep for me, he said. Sure, I'd keep the best rooms for your guests. You can count on us to make your guests feel comfortable and well cared for. I assured him. Well, I should be getting back to the office. My attention is needed there, he said, getting to his feet. What? Andiwe, wenti no shen. Okay. We'll see you soon. Have a lovely day, I said, stretching forth my hand, but instead he pulled me in for a hug. I felt uncomfortable and slowly pulled out of the warm embrace. He noticed and smiled a little. I am sorry for making you feel uncomfortable, Jasmine. I guess we haven't reached that stage yet. I am really sorry, he apologized. No qualms. I'd get used to it as time goes on, I said. Well, I better get back to work. Those files on my table won't sign themselves, he said, chuckling. I chuckled too and walked him to the elevator. He entered the elevator, waved at me before the doors closed, and I waved back too with a smile. I walked back into my office and sat on my chair trying to go through some new recipes, as Beth wanted to add to the menu. Our hotel guests love our menu, but requested that we add new cuisines to the menu, and that is exactly what I was working on until I heard a knock on the door. "Come in," I said, looking up from the open laptop in front of me. The door came open, and I saw a smiling Beth at the door. What did she want again? Did she see Jack again? "I just saw Mr. Handsome exiting your office." "Another charity event to organize?" she asked. "No, he came to tell me that a little birdie told him I recently got married," I replied, throwing a glare her way. "When you said a little birdie, why did you make air quotes?" she questioned. "Because you are the little birdie you told him," I said, looking at her with a fake glare. "So what did you guys talk about?" Beth queried inquisitively. "He told me that he wants me to choose the perfect sweets for his guests, coming from about 4 different countries. He said he came to me directly because he could trust my opinion," replied. "He even said we're friends. I mean, I only thought of him as a client. But he told me today that we were friends," I added. "Really?" she exclaimed. "Yes," I answered, wondering why she was now staring and smiling at me in a strange way. "Does that mean you are going to help me bring us together?" she asked, giving me the puppy eyes. Beth has had a huge crush on Jack since the first day he came to our hotel to book the hall for a conference meeting. And trust me when I say Beth doesn't just randomly like guys. She has great taste in men. She couldn't talk to him about it, so she just stalked him quietly. I always warned her about it, but she wouldn't listen to me. No. Even though he says he is my friend now, I can't bear to match 2 friends together and end up watching them go all PDA in front of me. "Gross," I replied, making a disgusted face and causing Beth to chuckle. "But on the bright side, I get to hang out with you guys when you are meeting up as friends outside business, right?" she asked. That could work. Maybe a once or twice," I said jokingly. But the look on her face threw me into a laughing fit. "You should know I am joking, Beth. Sure. You could join us in our outings if there is going to be any, and maybe I'll introduce you guys to each other," I said. Beth squealed in excitement and threw her arms around my neck, and I had to tap on her shoulder to let her know she was holding me too tight. "Thank you so much, Bees. Well, let me get back to the kitchen and keep an eye on things around there." "See you later, love," she said, walking away. I chuckled at her how happy she was leaving my office. She seemed like she had just won a lottery or had gotten a visa to travel out of the country, probably to Dubai, because she has been rambling about visiting Dubai ever since her cousin told her about how beautiful that place was. Soon, it was time to go home, so I grabbed my bag and phones and exited my office. I locked the door behind me and walked into the elevator. I typed in the number to the ground floor, and the elevator began to move downwards. I wish the day could be longer than this. I dreaded going home, a home that doesn't make me happy. It is not a home. A home would consist of a happy family, but this wasn't a happy family. Is this even a family? I had already ordered an Uber, and it would be picking me up in the next 10 minutes. I checked the time on the wristwatch on my wrist, and it says 5:05 p.m. I waited a few more minutes until a white, fancy car pulled over in front of me, and the windows rolled down. I saw a friendly-looking man look out the window and with a bright smile on the face, said, "Did you order an Uber?" "Yes," I replied. "Well, get in, miss," he said, still keeping the smile on his face. I smiled back at him and thanked him while entering into his car. The car's interior was amazing. It had red, leather seats and the steering wheel was white too. The Uber driver drove to my destination I gave him after typing my address into the GPS system in his car. The ride was cool and I almost fell asleep, but then the Uber came to a halt after some minutes. I got out of the vehicle and expressed my thanks to the driver, but was stunned to see his countenance. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. "This is the house of Sebastian King. How do you know him?" "Who are you to him?" he asked. I was about to reply when he gasped and looked at me in shock. Please don't tell me you are his wife. I heard he got married recently, he added. Well, you could say that, was all I could say. His eyes instantly lit up, and he stood fixed to the spot. He rummaged through the glove box in the car and pulled out a pen and a book, which looked like a diary. Please, can I get an autograph? He asked with bright eyes. Okay, I replied confused. I've never had anyone meet me for an autograph. Is this what being married to a wealthy man feels like? Well, I took the book from him and signed my signature on it. He was elated when he collected the book from me. I gave him the money for the cab and he thanked me like I've done him a huge favor. He entered his cab and zoomed off. For some reason, I was delighted within myself. I strode through the gigantic gate towards the mansion. I was so dog-tired that as soon as I walked into my room, I dropped on my bed and snoozed off. I didn't know for how long I slept, but when I woke up, it was darkness all over the place. I traced the table lamp on my bedside table and switched it on. I got up, pulled off my work clothes and entered the bathroom. I washed up my body and felt clean again. With a towel swathed around my chest, I walked out of the bathroom. As I was about to take off the towel, the door opened and I spun around to check who had just barged into my room. He stood there, and for a moment the tension in the room was palpable. I felt my heart racing. He looked astounded. Then I realized I was only in a towel that was barely covering my thighs. I quickly wrapped my arms around my chest area. He cleared his throat and looked anywhere else but me. I came to inform you that my parents would be joining us for dinner tomorrow. So get prepared, he said, and walked out almost immediately, closing the door behind him. I felt heat on my cheeks. I walked to the vanity and checked my face on the mirror to see that I was red-faced. I couldn't possibly be flushed. I was embarrassed that he had to see me that way. I quickly got dressed, at the same time wondering why he didn't knock on the door before coming in. When I was done getting dressed, I sauntered out of my room with the intention to join Selena and May to cook dinner. Getting to the dining table, I saw the table was already set. I was confused. Did I sleep for that long? Seems like I slept into dinner time. I walked to the kitchen and saw Selena cleaning things up. Hi, Selena. Did you guys finish cooking already? I questioned. Yes, darling. Your dinner is on the dining table, she replied. Wow, I slept for long then. I am so sorry. I could join you and make to cook dinner, I said to Selena. No problem, dear. I understand you must be tired from work, she answered understandably. Where is Sebastian? Has he had dinner yet? I asked. I didn't know why I asked. I just felt like I had to pretend that we were a happily married couple. But who am I kidding? Selena knows Sebastian too much. She probably knows the truth behind our marriage. He has not come back since this evening. He left to hang out with some friends, Selena replied. He goes out like this every evening and comes back late at night, so you'll just have to bear with that, she said. Looking sad like there was more she had to say, but I just nodded. I'll go have dinner then, I said, turning towards the dining room. But Selena held me back. Jasmine, I know your marriage with Sebastian is an arranged one, but I want you to be strong. You are going to see a lot and experience some unpleasant things, but you have to stomach them and tolerate Sebastian. He may be a little too much at times, but he is a good boy and a fine man. Just bear with it even if it hurts, Selena said. I hugged her as I felt tears gather up in my eyes. That is what I wanted to hear. Thank you, I whispered in her ears. Now go have your dinner, she said, patting my back. I smiled and pulled out of the warm hug. I smiled at her and walked towards the dining table. Just as I had begun eating, the door went wide open. I somewhat couldn't believe what I was looking at. What shocked me. What shocked me was the tall, slender, attractive, light-skinned lady. She didn't look stoned. She was trying to help Sebastian so he could walk. They were both muttering things into each other's ears and snickering out loud. They didn't seem to notice me. They were so engrossed with what they were saying that they didn't see me. I felt tears gather in my eyes. But why was I tearing up? It is not like this marriage is an amazing love marriage. We really don't know or love each other. Maybe the reason I was crying was because Sebastian didn't even respect the fact that I was here. We might not be in love with each other, but we're married. I am his wife. He ought to respect that. Even if he wanted to sleep with another woman, he ought not to bring her to the house. Could this be the reason Selena spoke to me earlier and looked sad? I became so angry. I got up from the chair and stormed off to my room. I had lost my appetite. I couldn't go back to sleep, so I just picked up my phone and pressed away. I didn't know for how long I did that, but then I checked the time. It was 2 a.m. My stomach was rumbling. I wanted to bear the pains, but when I couldn't take it anymore, I wore my slippers and made my way downstairs to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and pulled out an apple. I knew this wouldn't solve my hunger problems, but it would at least reduce it. I hope so. I took a bite of the ripe and yummy fruit in my hand. I closed my eyes to really savor the apple. Not long, I finished the apple and felt a little bit better than before. I walked back to my room and actually fell asleep this time. Sebastian's point of view. I didn't want to get married. I wanted to live the way I have always been living, but I guess my parents had other plans for me. All I wanted to do was enjoy myself while I was young, not wanting to commit to any relationship now. But I got tied down by getting married to someone I didn't know. Talk more of love. I can't believe my parents would get me married to a complete stranger. Don't mind me. My parents are the first people I love and would love for life before anyone else because they saved my life. But sometimes I wonder if I can bear with them despite what they do, most times. Well, I got married. I did their wish, but that didn't mean I would stop my old lifestyle. They think marriage would stop me from living my life the way I want. Hell no. When I accidentally walked into her in only her towel, I must say I was stunned. She had a flawless skin, just by simply looking at it. Her legs were long and straight and she looked beautiful, but I controlled my body. I didn't let my emotions take over. I couldn't get the image of her beautiful body out of my head, so I decided to go out and meet my friends at the club. Hey Matt, are you guys at the club yet? I asked my best friend. Yeah man, we're all just waiting for you now, he replied. My friends, Matt, Damien, and Josh have been my friends from a very long time. Matt and I have the lengthiest relationship. We have been childhood friends. Our mothers were close friends too, so it makes sense. When my parents adopted me, I was 9 years old. They took me to where they lived after signing the adoption papers. I didn't open up to anyone because of what I had experienced with my past foster parents. There was a house close to our house. Every day, a little boy would come out of their house and play with his toy cars and action figures. I wanted to play with him, but I was fearful. I guess Mom noticed because one day, she brought the boy in and introduced me to him. That was how Matt and I became intimate friends. The rest of the guys we met in college, and we all got along and remained friends even after leaving school. I walked out of the house into the garage and decided to take the Lexus out. I got into the car, put on my seatbelt, and brought it to life. I drove out of the garage and into the roads. I drove straight to Diamond Bar and Club. It was a classy clubhouse owned by Josh. We meet there every day to talk about business and hang out. I drove really fast because I couldn't wait to down some alcohol and forget about what I saw at home. Soon, I was parking my car at the parking lot. I stepped out of the car after spotting a parking space and parked my car in it. I strode into the clubhouse and there was loud music playing. The clubhouse was soundproof, so anyone passing it wouldn't hear the loud music except you go inside or open the door. I walked straight to the VIP lounge, where the boys were waiting. When they saw me, they all got up to welcome me. We did the bro shake and all the welcoming rituals before we sat down. They had already gotten some drinks. Wow. You guys could wait for just 5 minutes before getting your drinks, I teased. I was only like this with my guys, teasing, laughing. But at work or anywhere else, I am stringent and aloof. I am known as the daredevil at work. They think I don't hear them call me names. The truth is I chose to pretend not to hear them. The thing is, if I act on every statement they make, I'd probably have no employees under me. We couldn't wait any longer, bro, said an already drunken Damien. He was the most energetic among us. He was the wildest, philanderer, drunkard, and the most careless one in our group. He changes women like he changes clothes in a day. And trust me, he changes his clothes like 5 times a day. Josh, though he owns a clubhouse, wasn't as wild as Damien. Well, he used to be until he got married about 11 months ago, and his wife is presently heavy with a child. He stopped living recklessly ever since he got married to his wife, Eva, and even stopped drinking alcohol since she got pregnant. He drinks non-alcoholic wines and goes out less now. Matt and I are almost the same. We sleep with women, but just once in a while. Also, we don't drink irresponsibly like Damien. I took my seat and beckoned to a waitress who waltzed her way to our table. It was Bella. The usual, I told her, and waltzed away again to get my order. The guys and I began to talk about business. Then, we moved our conversation to random things. After about an hour, Josh excused himself to go home to his wife, but told us to make ourselves comfortable. I couldn't believe the once wild Josh had been tamed by a woman. Well, I didn't believe in love like he did. I just wanted to enjoy my youth and move on. Damien was already passed out on the chaise longue, snoring quietly. I was facing the crowd downstairs, watching them dance and wiggle their bodies. Seb, Matt called me. Yeah, I answered. What's the problem? You look off today. Are you okay? You know you can tell me anything, he said. I tore my eyes off the crowd and faced him. I was a bit drunk, but I could see the seriousness etched on his face. Matt can be very playful when he wants to be, but when he's serious, you know he has something very crucial to say. I am good, bro. Therese, nothing wrong, trust me, I assured him before turning my attention back to the crowd. The music had changed now, and the dance too. A slow, romantic song was on, and everyone had grabbed a partner close to themselves for a slow dance. You know I've known you for years now. Seb and I know when you are lying. You can lie to others but not me. Come and tell me what's up, he replied. This marriage thing is killing me. I don't know what my parents were thinking about when they enforced this marriage on me. But I pity her instead. Her parents practically sold her off. It's awful. We don't love each other, and we're living together in 2 different rooms, I said. I am a free bird. I can't be committed. I won't be committed. I enjoy the lifestyle I'm living now. I can't change it because I'm married, I said. Seb, don't you think it's time we stopped flirting around and get serious with our lives? You get serious with your marriage, and I find myself a lovely lady to get married to. I am scared of STDs, man, he said. I let out a profound, loud laugh. Matt was scared of almost everything, and it has been that way since childhood, man. If you want to stop, you can. No one's stopping you, but for me, I will relish this life to the fullest. To raise only one life to live, man, cheers, I said. Raised my glass and faced the crowd once again. Not quite long, a gorgeous lady in a red revealing dress walked up to our table and winked me, and that was it. I said my goodbyes to Matt and walked out of the clubhouse with my hand behind the beautiful lady. She was supporting me because I was deeply disoriented. I couldn't drive and she wasn't drunk, so I told her my address and she drove off. I don't know why I trusted her, but I couldn't afford to put 2 lives in danger by driving. Though I was deeply disoriented, I was still very much aware of my surrounding, just in case she tried to act smart. Soon we reached my mansion, and it was a little bit tough, trying to get me down from the car and into the house. I staggered and laughed at myself for trusting a woman to help me walk. Soon we entered the house, and the gorgeous woman beside me whispered something in my ears that I couldn't understand. But I laughed nonetheless, and she laughed too. I told her where to find my room, and we ascended the stairs to do our thing. Jasmine's point of view. You're a jerk. I hate you. That was the first thing I heard that brought me back to the land of the living. The yells of a lady insulting someone woke me up from my sleep. I guess it was the lady Sebastian brought home last night. I walked towards my door and opened it. He had shattered yet another poor girl's heart. It was disheartening to see my fellow girl wrecked, but what did she expect? Guys that looked like Sebastian couldn't commit to anything. Sebastian looked from her fleeing figure to me, and I quickly avoided his stare. Remember, my parents are coming for dinner, he said, and entered his room. Rude jerk, I muttered. Work that day went well. It was a bit hectic, but that was the joy of it. I went home on time so I could join Selena and May to prepare dinner for my in-laws. We prepared a lot as if we were preparing for a large feast. I asked why, but Selena told me the king's family was a bit large. I thought only his parents would be visiting. I said, no dear, the whole king's family would be present here today. She replied, wow, I didn't know that. Now I have to impress his other family members too. That is nice, I thought sarcastically. I nodded and continued cooking with them. After 3 hours in the kitchen, we were finally done cooking. I walked up to my room and pulled off my clothes and tied a towel around my body. Once again, I reminded of yesterday when Sebastian burst into my room. I felt warmth on my cheeks once more, but I ignored it and walked into the bathroom. I stepped into the bathtub and decided to take a soothing foam bath. I still had enough time before Sebastian's family began to arrive. After spending about 30 minutes in the bathtub, I cleaned my body with soothing, warm water and got out. I came out of the bathroom and walked to my closet. I looked around but couldn't find a suitable dress. I had a lot of nice dresses, but I felt they would not be presentable enough when I meet the kings. I checked the time and saw I still had 2 hours before they got here. I wore a sea green top and a jean trouser with sneakers. I grabbed my car keys from the bedside stool and walked out of the room and out of the house. I got into my car, put on my seatbelt, and drove out of the mansion. I drove to Diva's Collection. It's a boutique and it's not my first time there. I have a friend who works there. Well, she became my friend after patronizing the store a number of times. I greeted the receptionist and she responded back. We've met several times whenever I go to the boutique. I went straight to the clothing section and began to look around for a nice gown. I saw a red gown that was skin tight and would likely bring out my curves well. I walked into the changing room and tried on the gown. I loved the dress, but the problem with it was that it had a V neckline. I wouldn't want to leave my boobs exposed in front of Sebastian's family. I didn't want to look like a seductress. Not like there was anyone to even seduce. I decided to check other aisles in the clothing section. Maybe I would see something I like. I continued searching until my eyes caught another red gown. I removed it from its rack and checked if it was my size, and it was. I entered into the changing room and wore the gown. It had small diamond tinsels on the front. It was a V-necked gown too, but it wasn't going to expose my boobs like the first gown. I loved the gown immediately because other than the diamond tinsels, it hugged my shape nicely. In this, I won't look like a seductress or a poor woman whose family sold her for riches. I checked the price tag and surprisingly, it was something I could afford, so I went for it immediately. I took it to the counter and paid for it. I thanked the cashier as I collected the bag she had it boxed into for me. I sauntered out of the boutique and straight to my car. I drove out of that street straight to Sebastian's mansion. I drove into the mansion with 30 minutes to spare. I quickly went into my room and changed into the dress, and I looked good in it. I sat by the vanity mirror and applied my makeup, Not a heavy one, just a little touch of makeup. I styled my hair into a neat bun and applied my edge control to the edges of my hair so tiny pieces of my hair wouldn't fall to my face. I matched my dressing with my black stilettos, one of the latest models. I walked downstairs almost at the same time the bell rang. I walked to the door and opened it to see my parents-in-law and an older version of couple whom I guessed to be Sebastian's grandparents. With smiles, I received them in. Sebastian's grandparents and parents were pleased to see me. I ushered them to the dining table, and not long, the doorbell rang again, and I wondered who it would be. I opened the door to see a gorgeous lady carrying a baby and trying to control a crying toddler. A man was standing by her, holding another toddler looked like the one the lady was holding. Guess, they're twins. I guess you're Jasmine, the lady my older brother married to. My name is Nova, she said, with a smile. Please come in. My name is Nova, too, I said, welcoming them in. Well, for that, I like you already, she said, and let out a soft laugh, and I laughed too. This is my husband Randy, she said, pointing towards the man standing beside. Hi. He stretched out his hand to shake mine, and I reciprocated. I led them to dining table, and once again the doorbell rang. Gosh, how many more families would be coming today, I thought, a little bit frustrated. I got the door this time, and I saw a guy that almost looked like Nova. Perhaps they're twins too. Wow, my bro got himself a beautiful angel. Hi, I am Justin, Sebastian's younger brother. Nice to meet you, he said. He pulled out his hand for a shake, and when I extended my hand, he pulled me in for a hug. I was shocked and speechless. Justin, get your hands off your brother's wife. She's taken already, his sister said, and he took off his hands immediately. Don't mind my twin brother Nova. He thinks he can impress all women with his charms. He is just like his brother who used to carry women all around town. I thank God he found you. I'm sure he wouldn't continue with that lifestyle. Nova, his sister. Oh, if only you knew, I thought. I just smiled at her and joined them at the table. Selena and May and a few other helps had helped set the table. Soon we all began eating. The families talked randomly, putting table manners aside. Even Sebastian joined in the discussion. He laughed and talked with his siblings. It was like they've not seen themselves for years, the way they were talking amongst themselves excitedly. What did I have to say? I knew nobody at the table, so I just stayed quiet eating my food. So Jasmine, what do you do? Sebastian's grandmother asked me, causing the whole table to go silent at once. All eyes were on me except Sebastian's, and I felt the grounds should open up and swallow me. I cleared my throat and answered, I am the director of Louisville Deluxe Hotel and Restaurant, I replied. Simple and short, no further explanations. I didn't think I was ready to share my life with a couple of people I hardly knew. Wow, you're too young to be the director of such a big hotel and restaurant, Grandpa replied, raising an eyebrow. I just smiled and continued eating my food, but I raised my head to see all eyes were still on me. Oh, you want me to explain how I became all that at such young age? I questioned and all heads nodded, except Sebastian, who still looked completely uninterested in the story I had to tell now. But I knew he was listening. I studied hotel management and catering while in college. When I finished from college, I found it difficult to secure a job, but then when I saw that the hotel was hiring interns, I applied for the job. After some months, my boss wanted to retain me because he said I did a very good job as an intern. So that was how I continued working for the hotel, except this time it was on a different term. I was now a full-time staff, working in the kitchen. Later, I was moved to the hotel as room service. I put all hard work and determination, and when the CEO of the company wanted to resign, he called for me and handed me the position. He said that he got good reports about me from some of the clients and staff and decided to give me the position. I said, I can't believe I just told complete strangers a part of my life. Oh dear, I'm so sorry for thinking wrong. I thought you know, Grandma said. At first, I was confused like I didn't understand what she meant, but then it clicked. Oh, I understand. Anyone would think that anyways. So it's nothing, Grandma. I get that kind of look from people when I tell them that I am a hotel director. Even some people at my place of work thought that I slept my way to the top, so don't worry. I'm used to those kinds of stare and looks. I responded. The table was silent at that point. No one said anything. There was no noise except the clanging of forks on the plates as we ate in silence. The sudden change of mood was so uncomfortable. The way everyone was quiet. I knew they all thought the same way as Grandma, and they felt guilty. Thinking about it, even if they didn't say it out loud. Whoa, the table is so quiet. Let's lift up the mood. Therese, no need for the excitement to die down, I said, trying to lift the tension off the room. The table became lively again. This time they asked lively questions, and there were sounds of laughter at every corner of the table. I noticed Justin looking at me from across the table several times, but I pretended not to know. I was getting uncomfortable by his stares. I just joined in the conversation, going around at the table. Soon dinner was over, and everyone began to leave gradually. First, grandparents left first because they were a little bit tired. Before Grandma left, I hugged her and assured her I wasn't mad at what she thought, and she kissed my cheek and said I was the best girl for her grandson. Then, Nova and her husband left with the kids. She hugged me and apologized to me on behalf of her whole family. She said we'd get in touch. So she collected my number and I collected her number too. I got to know the kids a little too. Justin left with them and he gave me a wink before leaving, and I felt my cheeks heat up, like I was blushing. He was cute, so don't blame me. Next to leave were Sebastian's parents. They hugged me and also apologized on behalf of Grandma and everyone else. I assured them once again that I wasn't mad at any one of them, but instead I enjoyed their company. Besides, the meal was great. Selena said you cooked the meal. Naomi said, "Thank you," I said, smiling. As everyone left, I joined Selena and the other girls to clean up the table and wash the dishes regardless of the stern look from Selena. When she saw that I wasn't backing down, she just shook her head and I laughed. I was so tired by the time we were done. I practically dragged my feet to my room. I opened the door to my room and walked in. I pulled off my clothes. Oh, I forgot to mention, the ladies complimented my dressing and asked where I got them, and I told them about Diva's collection. I got under the shower and had a quick hot shower. The weather was actually freezing, so the hot shower would help a little. I exited the bathroom after a few minutes and changed into my pajamas. I hopped into bed and soon I was out like light. 1 month had passed since I got married. Things had been a little difficult. I can't remember the last time I saw Sebastian. I didn't know he traveled for a business meeting, and I heard this from Selena. I didn't let it get to me. I was a bit happy. I got to know other workers in the house. I got to know Tiffany, Sandra, and Casey. They were the maids in the mansion, and most times they help in the kitchen too. I also got to know Brian. The gardener, he was quite elderly but cheerful. We became friends soon, and he would tell me about his late wife and his son who's presently in another country. His son, who he labored to send to school, neglected him after he became well off. I wonder how a son would be ashamed of a parent who sent him to school. Through thick and thin, I felt Brian and I were going through the same thing, and that was why we clicked so easily. I told him about my parents and what they did to me. He was consoled me and I him. We would talk for hours, and I must tell you, Brian is an entertaining person, and you would definitely not get bored when you are with him. When Sebastian came back from his unannounced trip, I was kind of reminded of the sad reality that I was married to him. He continued bringing ladies to the house, and I didn't tell anyone. I would just keep quiet and mind my business. Whenever he comes home with those exploited persons, I'd just go upstairs to my room and plug in my headset and listen to some music. Or whenever it gets worse, I'd just leave the house and go spend some time at Beth's. She never seemed to mind. I would tell her what's going on at the house, and we would feast on some ice cream and snacks and talk down on Sebastian. And we would always have fun doing that. One certain day, I was in my room watching a movie on my phone when I suddenly got a phone call from a strange number. At first, I didn't want to pick up because most calls like this were usually scammers or hack calls, and I didn't want my phone or account to be hacked. So what I did was disconnect the call. Then my phone rang again. And again. But I kept ignoring the calls. For some moments, it didn't ring again and I smiled. Probably the scammer didn't want to waste time on me. Just as I was still rejoicing over that fact, my phone rang again, and it was the same number aggressively. I picked up the phone and said, "Hey, scammer, what is it you want? Don't you get tired? You've called several times and I didn't pick your calls. Doesn't that tell you that I have found out already what your plan is? When you're done talking, come to my room," a deep, familiar voice said on the other line. It sounded like Sebastian's, but he clearly told me in the rules and regulations that I wasn't to go anywhere near or inside of his bedroom. Why the sudden change of heart? Maybe it was someone else. Maybe someone else was trying to call their fiancé or wife and by mistake called my number instead. It happens at times. I just moved on with what I was doing initially and didn't pay mind to what the person on the phone had just told me. Then again, my phone rang again with the same number appearing on the screen. I grunted frustratingly and heaved a sigh before picking up the call. I didn't know who this was and what they wanted, but I'll let them know what's on my mind. "Hey," I was saying, but got cut off. "Jasmine, I need you in my room in the next 10 seconds, or you might not like what I would do next." The voice said, and this time I was convinced that it was Sebastian. I rose up from my bed, wore my slippers, walked out the door and made my way to the door 2 doors to my left, which happened to be his room. I knocked on the door and walked in. I was shocked at how big his room was. It had blue carpet, black curtains, and blue couches at the corner of the room. The bed cover used was black in color, and the drawings of a lion roaring on it. I was so fascinated by how the colors blended well and gave the room an exquisite look. I didn't realize Sebastian was standing right in front of him until my eyes met his and I jumped in fright. "You called me," I said, but sounding more like a question, "and you decided to take the whole time in the world to answer me." He snapped. Well, in my defense, it was an unknown number. I didn't have that number saved on my phone, so I was scared it was one of these scammers. Secondly, you didn't say it was you. If you did, it would have made it even better, but you didn't. "I don't go round picking up calls from unknown numbers immediately," I answered. The look on Sebastian was funny and I couldn't but hold back my laughter. He looked at me like I had grown a second head. I was so engrossed in my speech that I didn't even realize he wasn't putting on a shirt. His asterisk was popping out on his chest, and something in me wanted to feel them. I was shamelessly checking him out, and I knew I shouldn't be, but I couldn't help it. I felt my heart racing and stomach tingling at the same time. It was like my heart was running a race. I felt butterflies in my stomach. "No, Jazz. Number, you can't be falling for him. Hez, a playboy, a total jerk, a pain. You can't be falling in love with Sebastian, of all people." I thought to myself, "Like what you see?" he asked with a smirk on his beautiful face. Oh my God, what is going on with me? Did I just call his face beautiful? Those asterisks have surely twisted my head. I can't possibly be complimenting Sebastian of all people. I would rather compliment DJ Swiss than compliment Sebastian. And trust me when I say DJ Swiss is my worst artiste. "You wish," I responded, rolling my eyes, and his demeanor changed immediately. I couldn't help but smile. I guess he wasn't used to someone not complimenting his great body. "Anyways, what was it you called me in here for?" I can remember vividly that you mentioned it in the rules and regulations that I wasn't permitted to be here in this room. That was exactly one of the reasons I didn't believe it was you on the line when you asked me to come in here. So I guess it must be a very important thing you want to tell me that you had me break your rule and regulations, I said. I didn't want to get distracted by his awesome body, so I just glued my eyes on his face. I was so embarrassed he caught me checking him out, and am glad he didn't push further, so I would try every means possible to avoid bringing that up again. My company is holding a charity event next week Friday and I have to bring you there. Normally, I wouldn't, but my parents would be there too, and I wouldn't want them to bother me with questions, so I would have to take you along with me. So I'll give you my credit card so you could go shopping and get what you'd need for the event, he said. Stretching out his card, I felt insulted. I felt insulted because he thought of me as a mere escort, someone who would follow him to events only when his parents would be present. I felt hot tears threatening to roll down my cheeks. Why didn't you come up with a lie since you don't want to go with me? You should have lied and then go solo to the event, I replied. I would have loved to, but my parents wouldn't believe me. They would have known something was up, especially when they know who I am and how we don't love each other, he answered. Besides, I wouldn't want to go solo to an event, especially when I have girls at my beck and call. So would you just take this card and go get a dress or something? He replied, sounding very pissed. Don't worry, Mr. King. I am very well capable of buying my own clothes myself, I replied, and walked out of the room. I swallowed back my tears and walked into my room. I pulled my phone out of the back pocket of my trousers and looked for Sebastian's number. I saw the strange number and saved it with rude jerk. After that was done, I came out almost immediately when I realized that it was almost time for dinner, so I had to help Selena and May prepare it. I walked down the stairs and into the kitchen. I smiled at May and her mother and washed my hands at the sink. Selena had given up trying to stop me from joining them in the kitchen. She knew I would never listen. Thus she just permits me do what I want. I assisted in washing the vegetables and cooking the food. I also taught Selena and May some of the key recipes we use at the restaurant. Soon, an aroma wafted across the room, and I couldn't help but inhale the mouth-watering aroma. I helped them set the dining and had Selena call on Sebastian. She went upstairs to call him like I had sent her to, but came back saying Sebastian requested for his food to be brought to him in his room. I was somewhat happy that I wouldn't get to see his face for the rest of the day, and I couldn't really tell why I was sad. She took his food to his room while I ate as the whole house was silent. If a pin dropped to the ground, I'm certain everyone in the mansion, no matter where they were, would hear the sound of the pin. I was through with my meal, so I went back up to my room and decided to take a long shower. I pulled off my clothes, wrapped a towel around my chest, and put on my shower slippers. I walked into the bathroom and switched on the shower. I washed my hair and body thoroughly. After I was done, I exited the bathroom and got changed into my PJs. I slipped under the covers of my bed and closed my eyes. I fell asleep almost immediately. GRNND. My alarm rang the next morning, and I slammed my hand down on it. The noise from the alarm clock was too loud for my delicate ears. I dragged the blankets off my body, dragged my feet to the bathroom, and did my normal morning routine. I came out of the bathroom and sauntered into my walk-in closet. I had to dress smart to work today. I pulled out a sky blue silk blouse and a black straight skirt. I wanted to look professional today because an important client was coming to meet with us today concerning a huge party he wanted to throw in our hotel's hall. He wanted to throw a surprise wedding anniversary party for his parents, and our hall was recommended to him by one of our long-time clients. I want him to take us serious, hence the professional dressing after all. It is said that the way you dress is the way you'll be addressed. I applied my body lotion and makeup before putting on my clothes carefully, so I wouldn't smudge my makeup. I wore my black platform heels and checked myself one more time on the vanity mirror before picking up my bag and car keys. I exited the room and walked downstairs. I wanted to have breakfast, but on checking the time, I saw that I didn't have enough time to sit for a breakfast. I would just have my breakfast at the restaurant or hotel. I exited the mansion and walked straight to the garage. I drove my car out of the premises and headed straight for work. I got to work with few minutes to spare. The meeting was going to take place in the next 5 minutes. I hurriedly got into my office and took a breather while waiting for the client to make his way into my office. Soon, I heard a knock on the door. "Come in, please," I said, and the person on the other side of the door made his way in.